if someone gave me the opportunity, I wouldn't want my coach to say no. But 20 minutes into the journey, he started crying in the car. I said, I can't do this. I don't want to go. I'm not going to the trial. I don't want to play. As much as you're thankful that they've got the opportunity, it does come at a cost. And when you lose 6 players in 1 year, that was a huge hit for us financially as well.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode from Front Row Seats. This is our first episode of a new series we're doing. I'm joined with our first guest, which is Brandon Chambers. Hello, Brandon.
Hi guys, you all right?
And also we're joined by our co-host always, Owen. How are you?
How are we doing, guys? Hope you're all well.
Of course, Owen, do you want to start off then?
Yeah, so obviously we've got Brandon here with us today. Obviously the main sort of focus for this podcast is to talk about sort of grassroots football and like the sort of like the early stages of football, like the sort of like the bottom couple of tiers. So we're not really talking about the sort of the professional game, but obviously talking a lot about sort of the development of players. So obviously, Brandon, I'm right in saying that you've done a lot of coaching within sort of like youth football and within it sort of like the bottom level. So if you want to sort of talk about that.
Yeah, so I've been coaching now for about 7 years. I started off when I was 16. I've coached at 2 different grassroots clubs. I've done a bit in academies as well. So kind of took a step back as of next year. But for the last 7 years, I've been really heavily involved.
Yeah, and how is that? So is it sort of like a specific age range, or is it all ages? So like, what kind of sort of where have you coached in that aspect?
Yeah, so the youngest I've done is 3 years old, and the oldest I've done is 15. So it can vary from week to week. It can vary from year to year. I try to take a team as far as I can. So at the moment, I've got an under 17. I'm trying to take them through as high up the year groups as I can possibly get them.
Yeah.
But other times, I just picked them up just for a few months and then pass them on when I thought the time was right, really.
And what about sort of the academy stuff? So what has coaching took you down that avenue?
Yes, a couple of years back, I had a really successful under-9s team, and about 6 of them all ended up going to academies. One of the people from Nottingham Forest asked if I wanted to work in a development centre for a while, do some volunteer coaching around there. I did that for about 6-7 months, just coaching the Colton Development Centre for Nottingham Forest.
Yeah. And how does that differ from like coaching at a young level, sort of character, like day by day, sort of training sessions? Like, how do they differ?
It's a lot more intense. Like, it has to be planned out well in advance. You can't just kind of like turn up and wing it like I do some weeks if I've had like a busy day or whatever. But and the parents are watching you like 24/7 as well. Like they say they watch the kids. They kind of judge you as well as judging like what their child's doing. So the pressure there is like completely different compared to just coaching on like a Wednesday evening like local team.
Yeah. So obviously, we've all sort of been involved with sort of grassroots football and stuff. Obviously, Dylan, you've played a hell of a lot.
Yeah.
Brandon, obviously, you're coaching. Obviously, me as a new ref as well. I've done my fair share of grassroots football. I think we can all sort of establish and talk about how good it is. There's thousands of teams, hundreds of thousands of kids, sort of week in, week out playing football. Obviously, at the end of the day, it's the sort of base level for youth talent, and sort of bringing new players through the ranks. I mean, at the end of the day, all players have to start there. So what kind of sort of positive things would you say you've seen, Brandon? Like, what kind of positives do you think grassroots football can bring to a community?
I think the main one is just about bringing people together, really. Like, especially in the area I work in, where there's not a lot for like kids to do and stuff. It's about giving them that space, opportunity to go play football, to learn, to enjoy themselves, and to offer them the opportunity that maybe later on in life they wouldn't have without grassroots football. And even though the statistics are really slim of people from grassroots at your local clubs making it into like the professional league or whatever, it's still that little bit of hope that kids rely on and that kids want.
Yeah, of course, absolutely.
So obviously everyone grows up wanting to be a footballer, and having that grassroots and having that step to be able them to play, give it a go, even if they may not make it, but it's that chance to give it a go and see what it would be like maybe on like a smaller scale, And that's that grassroots does definitely provide children.
Yeah, it's that sort of level of joy of enjoyment. As you said, like you've gone from various age ranges. So do you notice like the enjoyment side start to get more serious as sort of age develops? Like what kind of trends do you see as from in a positive line as ages sort of go up?
Do you know what? I think it depends on the players you have and the team you have. So, for example, I had an under 14 side about 5 years ago, and it wasn't the greatest side in the world, but they enjoyed coming every week, and that was their main aim, just to come and have fun and be with their mates. But I had an under 9 side, I think it was 3 years ago now, where the aim was to win every week and to beat everybody else and to win the trophies because they were that good, and their aim was to get into academies. So while I think the higher up you go, and obviously the older you get, the more intense it does get, it can still happen from an early age, depending on sort of team that you have and the players you have around you.
Yeah. Would you agree that you have to sort as a coach, do you have to sort of address that in a different manner, or is that something that you do have like the same coaching style as you sort of change from team and age range, or would you say that certain age groups and teams need sort of like different coaching styles?
I try to follow the same structure. So like all my sessions will have a start, a middle, and an end. We'll have like a debrief, and I try and keep that as much as possible, just to keep the continuity and to keep the consistency.
Yeah.
But with the better players you coach, obviously you have to make changes and you have to adapt. And if you have weaker players, obviously you have to adapt them as well. So it's just about adapting to your surroundings and making sure you're catering for everyone who comes to your sessions, really.
Yeah. And what about you, Dylan, as well? So obviously, you know, we've played a lot of grassroots football and played for a lot of teams as well. How for you, like sort of playing for different teams and at different levels, have you seen changes within grassroots football as a player?
I'd just say probably, I don't know, like, I wouldn't say there was like a lot of change. Like, you like at Brandon said, if you have a certain group, because I was with quite a similar group from ages of like 9 to like when I finished like 15, 16.
Yeah.
I grew up with the same players, so our mentality was, well, one team was getting the Southampton was have fun. Like Brandon, who's wrestling plenty of games at Carlton Town, was trying to win a lot of games. You know what I mean? So it's like Brandon says, it's a mentality. Like when I used to play for Gunner South Bank with you, it was more I'm doing it because I love football.
Yeah, well, that was the fun aspect.
On a Sunday with Carlton Town, when I used to play for that team, it was more about winning.
Yeah.
So I think me playing Saturday and Sunday, but having two different was really good for me. Because I could enjoy myself on Saturday, but then be competitive on Sunday. But
yeah, absolutely.
Also, like I said, Brandon went over, every player is different. Like some players, like that I played with, who were like really talented, but just wanted to play football. They weren't bothered about being like, if they developed their skills, they could have probably made it to academies.
Yeah,
but they just wanted to enjoy themselves. So they joined teams that were maybe a bit lower down their quality, so they could be playing like Division 1 side, as in Sunday League, sorry. But they just join their mates in Division 2 because they want to have fun. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I know, like for me as a referee, like I've seen that in so many cases when you go, you sort of like ref a lower division game, but you can tell and you can clearly see when there's players that are there for the fun.
Yeah,
and they're not taking it seriously and they're just enjoying themselves and playing the game. And I suppose in a way you could argue the case that when a player does that and they play with more freedom and they sort of play with more fun, they're actually the ones that are sort of developing more, because they're not doing it out of sort of like, they're not playing with stress, they're not playing with
pressure.
That pressure. Yeah. They're playing because they're enjoying it and they're training because they're enjoying it. Brandon, have you ever noticed like sort of players develop differently depending on like their aspects of you know, are they too stressed? Are they doing it out of enjoyment? Like, what do you think's best for a player development at that level?
I think at grassroots, it's all about enjoyment. And if you're not enjoying it, you're probably there for the wrong reasons, to be honest, at grassroots level. Because if you're not enjoying your football, you're not going to play well, you're not going to train well, and you won't develop as a player. Like the best players I've coached and best players I've seen are the ones that turn up training because they want to be there, because they want to do well, and they want to try hard, and they want to work hard. Whereas like, I've had players that are really talented who just don't seem as committed.
Yeah.
And like I look back now, probably like 3-4 years ago, and the best player now probably wasn't that best player 3-4 years ago.
Yeah.
And I think obviously you can push yourself as much as you want, but But ultimately, if you're not enjoying it, then you won't progress.
You won't progress, yeah. And I think that's a really big thing at sort of the grassroots level as well, because in a way it's so free for players to sort of come and go from clubs. You know, if a player's not enjoying one team and their friends are playing for another team, it's so easy for a player to just move for enjoyment and stuff like that. I think it's a really good opportunity for like young players to just enjoy football. Obviously, Dylan, for you, like, how did it feel playing for multiple clubs? Like, did you enjoy one more than the other, or anything like that?
Yeah, I'd say maybe a bit different for me. Like, I used to play for my dad's team on Sunday, but near the end I hated it because there was so much pressure on me as like being like the coach's son.
Yeah,
Thingy, it was like, and he was so determined for me to become pro, but I was never good enough. I knew I was never good enough to be pro, and I never wanted it enough to become pro, which made me fall out of love with the game a bit, and I regret leaving football at 16. But on a Saturday, when I was at South Bank and he wasn't there, I could just enjoy myself. So for me, I'd say I probably enjoy myself more. I enjoyed winning, don't get me wrong, but I do enjoy like getting South Bank when we were struggling, but I was playing centre back and like just fighting for everything. Do you know what I mean? But just enjoying myself as well. And playing with probably like a nicer bunch of lads as well, I'd probably say as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, sort of moving, I think it's all sort of clearly obvious that from a development standpoint, grassroots football is key. Yeah. You know, it's the sort of it's the fundamental, it's the baseline level, and it's basically where academies are looking to pick up their players. Brandon, how has your relationship with academies been? Obviously, being at such a wide age range of coaching, you know, going through all sorts of different ages, do you start to have sort of more communication with academies at a specific age? What's like kind of the process? So let's say, for example, one of your players is picked up by an academy. So what process happens there? And does that differ with sort of age and stuff like that?
Just pick up on your first question. I've had communication with academies from right from the age of probably under 7 up until under 15. Like they try and get them while they're young, so they try and get them as young as they can, so they can try and develop them. So when they're 16, 17, they're pretty much ready for men's football, ready for under 21s and whatever. But in terms of process, I think they obviously have to make contact with you first. So if they say, "Oh, I really want to come and watch your game," they have to ring you. And you can say yes or no. So you can say, yes, you can come and watch, or you can say, no, you can't come. And if you say no, they have to respect that and they don't turn up. Usually for me, I try and always say yes, because at the end of the day, most people who do get into football would like the opportunity to maybe be scouted or to have the opportunity. So I'd never say no to a scout. But so they come and watch the game. They usually stand, I'd say 10, 15 yards away from the pitch. They try to not make themselves known. And then they just watch. And then sometimes they'll come to you in the game and say, I really like number 7, I really like number 9. Can I speak to his parents? Again, that's if you say yes, then they can go. If you say no, then they can't. Or they might leave and then they might ring you back the next day and say, I really like that. Do you have a phone number? So I think it probably works in different ways depending on the scout and depending on how they like to operate. But for me, I try and be as easy going with them as I can, because I know if someone gave me the opportunity, I wouldn't want my coach to say no.
No, of course.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, so if you have to kind of put that player first, regardless of age. Have you ever had sort of trouble with scouts and sort of clashes with parents? Obviously, at such a young age, and obviously, of course, you've got to go through the parents at that point. Does it ever sort of cause drama for the player? Obviously, at such a young age, at the end of the day, they're really children. So sort of, can it have like, have you ever seen it have sort of like a big impact on the player or the parent or the family as a whole, or even the team?
I think for players, it depends on the type of person you are. I think that depends on how you take the news. So to give an example, one of my lads wanted to go to Derby for trials, and so we got the Derby scout down, and he said, yes, bring him up for trials in Derby. His parents didn't drive, so I offered to take him. But 20 minutes into the journey, he started crying in the car. I said, I can't do this. I don't want to go. I'm not going to the trial. I don't want to play. So sometimes the pressure does get to him, and sometimes it's that fear of not knowing what's coming next and what's going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
But for another player, they probably thrive under that pressure and thrive on the fact of knowing that they've got that opportunity now to get into the academy.
Yeah.
But obviously, but that all depends on that person. And everyone takes some things differently, and for me personally, I'd urge anyone just to go and just give it a go, to be honest, and just see what it's like, because you can always say no, I don't want to go once you've had a go at it, once you've tried it.
Yeah, that's the only way you're going to know. Do you think, obviously, like you said, you've had a sort of play academies trying to pick up players as young as 8. What's your thoughts on that? Do you think it's too young? Do you think it works? Do you think it's a good process? Do you think it's a bad process?
I think it's a bad process. I think when they're 7, 8, 9, even probably 10, I think it's too young. I mean, you try at that age, you're getting it for the fun element, and that kind of gets taken away once you get into the academy or once you get scouted. Because instead of going from like one training session and one match a week with your friends, you're going to like 2-3 sessions a week, and it can kind of become too much, and you kind of lose the love quite early on.
Yeah,
whereas probably like a couple of years time, maybe like 11, 12, 13, you kind of, if you're still playing football, you're playing it because you actually do love the sport. To me, that's probably the most ideal opportunity for academies, in my opinion, to maybe start looking at taking players on. But I do understand why they try and take them early, because they try and mold them into what they want them to be.
Yeah.
But ideally, for me, I don't think it's right that they can take them as 9-year-olds and like completely steal them out of the team in a certain way.
It's such a young age. I mean, I think it's fair to say, like, we see so many situations where players are taken too early and then are released, and it's just such a confidence knock. And I think at such a young age, where at the end of the day, a child is still developing. I think it can have some serious impacts on not only from like a sporting and a football development, but just overall development. A child is at such a young age, and it's hard to obviously, you have your players who stand out as talent, but at that age, things can change so quickly. How do you feel about it, Dylan? Obviously, playing at all sort of age groups. Like, when you look back on yourself, do you think you'd have been ready for the academy game? What's your thoughts on being picked up so early?
Well, I agree with Brandon. I think it's way too early at that age, because like Brandon said earlier, the player, I think he's only current team where 3 years ago he wasn't their best player, but now he is. So how can you turn around to a 9-year-old and say he's not going to be good enough when he's 18? For me, that's just bonkers. Like, obviously you can see bits, so you can maybe see flashes. I don't know, obviously I'm not a scout, so I can't tell you that.
Yeah, it's difficult to judge it, isn't it?
I would say one thing I did quite well was I didn't actually get to football. Like, I played football for school, but I didn't actually play for actually any football team until I was like 10.
Yeah.
So I never played at like 7, 8, 9 when there was that. I don't know if the academy player, just I can't tell you what it was like then. But from like what I could tell you from like 10, 16 was, I think when it gets to 11 aside, I mean that's when the academy start looking. Because because still 11 to 18 is still long enough time. Is it 11 we need to go to 11 aside? Is it 11 years old or 12?
If it's after 12, so under 13s will play 11 aside.
Well, from 13 to 18, that's 5 years. For me, that's still enough time to develop a player in my eyes.
Yeah.
And maybe even 20, because obviously there's the under 23 team, isn't there? We were speaking to Elvis on another podcast, and he said, like Brandon said earlier, he joined Forest at 9, hated the 2 sessions and like the routine of train, game, and missed the fun of his Sunday league team. So he left Forest for a year, and then came back to Forest when he was like Brandon said, when he was
a bit older.
So I agree with Brandon. I think for me it's way too early and puts too much pressure on the kids.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
just on that point as well, I think there's no guarantees that when you get signed at 7, you're going to be a professional footballer.
Exactly.
Like you see, like Dylan said, you see players that get picked up at 15, and by 18 are in doing the men's league, playing 13 football. Like, just because you're 7 years old and you're the best player then doesn't mean you're going to be the best player at 18.
Yeah.
And you don't want to miss out with playing with your friends and playing in cup finals and whatever, just because of an academy snapped you up as young as they could.
Yeah, and ultimately, like, that should be the aim. Like, do you enjoy playing football? Like, do you enjoy it? Because at the end of it's the same with all aspects of life, not just football. If you don't enjoy that area that you're in or what you're doing, you're not going to put your heart and soul into it. And I think it's sort of at that age of 7, 8 or 9 where you're not really making them decisions for yourself. You've been snapped up early. If you're not enjoying it at that age, the academy aren't going to keep you. And then
100%.
and then what happens then? Have you ever had any players, Brandon, that have like gone to an academy and then come back?
Not so much in my teams, possibly people that I know and people that I've coached previously have said, "Oh, we didn't like it in the academy, so we left and we joined another team."
Yeah,
I think it's just because it's the strictness and it's the constant training sessions, like 2-3 times a week in the game, 2-3 sessions in the game again. It's a lot to take on as a young person, and especially the younger you are. And for some people, they just can't cope with that at that age.
No, pretty different environment in it as well from like your team. So you go from your team training where you probably do like a fun exercise, but then focus a little bit on like just the basics of football. But then you go over to academy where obviously, like I said, I've not been to academy, but I can imagine it's like more drill stuff, more than just enjoying yourself. So that takes away, like you said, a lot of kids, 7, 8, and 9, will come back to you and be like, it wasn't fun. Like it literally, like you said, it just took the fun out of it.
Yeah, exactly. And ultimately, that's what football needs to be at that age.
Especially that age,
you know, I know my earliest memories. I played for clubs where I didn't know people, didn't really have friends. Just kind of went because they were like a club that was close. And within sort of 3 or 4 weeks, I'm like, no, I don't. Like, I've turned to my dad and been like, I don't want to be here because I don't know them. It's not fun. But then, like, obviously, like we've had Dylan, we're playing for Gedling South Bank and stuff. As soon as you know the people within that club, and you're within a comfortable environment with your mates, you get on well with the coach, it brings a complete new feel to playing football and to training and to games. And I think that is the main, should be like the main aim of football at that age.
100%.
Obviously, Brandon, you've had your fair share of sort of dealing with scouts and stuff. How is it once sort of like the deal is done? So obviously, let's say one of your players has been snapped up. What happens then? Do you hear back from the academy? Do you hear back from the player? So like, what's sort of like the ending process and then going forward from the player leaving your team and joining the academy?
It's quite a simple process, really. It's as simple as they sign the paperwork and that's it. They're not your player anymore. and pretty much like see you later. And obviously that's all well and good for that player and for the academy, but then the academy leaves a big gap in your team.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I had it a few years ago where I had 6 players within the space of 12 months, and that was my whole team gone. So my team folded the next year because we couldn't field a team because we didn't have any players. Because they all did so well and progressed into academies, but then I had 6 still left that were there for about team.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously that's great for you because it just shows sort of like your coaching expertise and how good you are as a coach. But then at the same time, for the other players that are left in your squad, and obviously for you, that leaves a really difficult scenario because not only are you now without a team, but you're then having to turn around to them other players and say, look, we haven't got a team anymore. How is that to deal with? How is that having to then start the new season and find a new team and find new players?
It's hard to say. I had 3 get taken midway through the season, so for the last 3-4 months was playing with just 7 players every week, so we had no subs, so that was hard in itself. Then it's like you come to pre-season again, it's right, where are these players going to go? Because most teams are probably full by now, so where are these players going to go? Where are they going to try and find their football? And it's all well and good.
Absolutely.
Academies taking players and academies offering deals and whatever, but they don't think about what actually happens to that team afterwards. So there's nothing, you don't get anything from the academy for them taking your players. Like, there's no thank you really. There's no appreciation shown. It's just cheers, thanks to your player.
Cheers for your player, and off you go. Yeah,
exactly. You get nothing out of it, and it's like whatever. I'd never stop a player going.
It's annoying.
But sometimes it would be nice just for an academy to say, here's something as a thank you, as a gesture, really. Or because especially if they're signing the player on, that probably means the player's also leaving the academy. They're not gonna overfill their academy. So could there be an opportunity for maybe players that are leaving to get linked to your club, and things like that weren't offered, and in hindsight it probably should be.
And that was another sort of aspect that I was going to sort of bring into this is financially. It's a shame that grassroots football, that is the main issue within grassroots football, is the financial struggle. I mean, like you said, academies have got so much money, especially within the big clubs are pumping so much money into the academy. And for you guys as the grassroots team, not only are you losing these players and not having the ability to even play games, but to be getting sort of no reward from that, it must be difficult financially. What kind of sort of financial issues have you found going through your sort of like coaching career in the level?
So I've always worked in like clubs that probably finances are quite a big issue just because of the demographic and the area. So, for example, I coach in St Anne's, and money in St Anne's is sometimes hard to come by. So you're charging low subs. So you charge maybe £1.50 a game, £1.50 training. But in reality, you're paying £20 for a ref, you're paying £30 for a pitch, you're paying £40 for indoor facilities when it's winter. So sometimes your outgoings
more than the income.
Completely, it's like it's more than the income, and that's when you start struggling. And then you see these academies that will come along and take your players, but actually you need that player to help your finances and to help run your club as well. Like as much as you're thankful that they've got the opportunity, it does come at a cost. And when you lose 6 players in 1 year, that was a huge hit for us financially as well. And so I just think money is always an issue with grassroots football. Like there's no, it's not like you can. It's not like you can go and get 3 footballs or 3 equipment or whatever and have 3 pitches all the time. There's always a cost. No matter what you do, there's always a cost of grassroots football.
Yeah, because obviously, like you know, you have things like subs, and like I personally, like growing up playing a bit of grassroots football, you don't think about it much from like sort of a club and a coaching perspective. But as I started to referee, you then notice things like paying a ref, pitch hire. You then need kit, so you know, balls, bibs, cones, small things that you take for granted become such an expensive element. And obviously, at the end of the day, if you're trying to develop players and have these players enjoy what they're doing, you can't do that without that kit. You can't do that without the ability to play matches, you know. And I think it's a really big issue sort of within not only, you know, with every team within grassroots football as a whole. Have you ever sort of found yourself having to sort of like financially cover things? And how much of an impact has that had on you personally as well?
So there's been the odd time where I'll put my hand in my pocket if I need to. If I need some new footballs and subs hasn't come in on time or whatever, then I'll go out my way and I'll buy the footballs for myself. And then my granddad more personally paid for like taxis and things when transport's been an issue. So if they can't get to a game because there's not enough cars, he'll pay for a taxi for the players, and then you don't get that money back. Like you don't see that money again. But it's stuff you do because you want your players to do well and you want your players to go out and enjoy themselves. So sometimes that is probably the financial hit you have to take if you're dedicated enough to grassroots football.
Yeah, and I think that's another sort of thing that is really quite sad in the academies. You know, you take like an academy team. Let's say, Brandon, you was a coach of an academy and you had all these academy players. I'm pretty sure sort of financially it wouldn't be an issue. You'd have your transport, you'd have your equipment, you'd have your training facility, you'd have your matches. Whereas I feel like academy sort of managers and the people that are running these academies don't realise how much of a sacrifice there actually is needed at the grassroots level. And I think it's a real shame that academies aren't sort of witnessing this and coming to this realisation that grassroots football needs this support.
No, definitely.
Another thing. Go on, Dylan. No, you're all right.
I was going to say, what would you ask? Like, obviously, there's obviously need more money in grassroots football. So, what could these clubs do in like Premier League, Championship, especially? What do you think they could do to improve grassroots football? Obviously, put money in, but how? Obviously, it's always a question like, where does this money go to? Because there's so many teams at grassroots level. Like, it costs them so much to pay for every club. Do you know where I'm coming from?
It's
like, so I don't know what they could do to just help out. I mean, that's the problem with so many teams. What do you do?
Yeah,
I think for me especially, it's just like improving the area that you're in. So like we have, for example, I'll pay maybe £30-40 for a pitch when in reality that I shouldn't really have to worry about paying for a pitch because it's only grass at the end of the day, and
Agreed.
things like that it becomes an expense. And I'd never say to an academy or to a Premier League club, "Oh, I should get footballs." Like you should feel obligated to buy me footballs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're earning millions. In some places, some teams are earning hundreds of millions.
Yeah, there's so much money at the higher level.
That's all profit, and that needs to be filtered down, because these players that play for your team, they come from grassroots. They come from a local part. They come from a local team that can't afford footballs or can't afford pitches or struggle to pay for the pitches. I think the least they could do is show some appreciation, whether that is with the odd thing here or there, or trying to make the area better for you, trying to make the pitches a little bit nicer. I don't think that would cost too much really, compared to what they're doing.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, and like you said, Brandon, at the end of the day, grassroots football is where it starts. You know, if you're a young kid or you have a young kid and they want to play football, that's the first place you go is grassroots. And I do think, you know, it kind of, in a way, it's not rocket science. If academies are sort of putting a bit of money to the side, not just one academy, you know, all academies could come together. And you know, if all of them just put a little bit together, that pot would eventually get bigger, to the point where grassroots football is not only going to be more enjoying and better for the players, and they're going to have more fun, but you're going to get a better quality team. You're going to get better quality leagues. You're going to get better quality grassroots football, purely on the fact that the facilities are there and the equipment's there. Obviously, you mentioned sort of pitches, and obviously, I know from my experience that some pitches have been absolutely shocking. What's your thoughts on and you, Dylan, as well? I'm sure you've played on some bad pitches.
I have.
How's your sort of like pitch experience been? Like, have you had bad pitches? Have you always been lucky? Have you games called off, that kind of thing?
Right now, I'm quite lucky. Like, I'm on a school field, so it gets cut regularly, gets marked regularly, and the drainage is pretty fine. A couple of years ago, I was on a local field, and it was council field, but they never did anything, so we had to mark it all out. We had to ring them and ask for it to be cut. And you turn up on a Saturday, and it'd be like a massive puddle in the goal, so you'd have to get some sand from your house just to fill the water in. And so I've had some shocking pitches, but again, that's what you're gonna get at grassroots. Is you're not gonna get the carpet pitches, you're not gonna get the AstroTurf pitches, the 4G pitches. You get what you're given, and that's how the players have got to learn. And if they can do it on a bumpy surface, on a pitch full of grass and full of sand, then they can do it on the best facilities in the world.
Yeah, I suppose in that aspect, it does kind of bring a positive to the fact that if you could play on a bumpy pitch and deal with a ball bobbling every pass you make. I mean, Dylan, what's your experience like with dealing with pitches and stuff? I'm sure you've got some stories.
Yeah, well, when I played up front for 2 years, that was a really good, because the amount of bumps would get you, like, the luckiest goal. I'd have the worst shot ever. And hit the bump and go over the keeper's arm. Like, you know what I mean? I scored like so many goals by just luck. But defending, if you let that ball bounce, you fucked it. It's going anywhere.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Because it's
so, if anything, it taught you don't let the ball bounce. But some of my best, like, maybe I'm a little bit old school, but some of my best, I love like them pitches. Like, you get to the pitch, like you get to especially the goalkeeper all the time. The goalkeeper, as Brandon, you're a keeper. The goalkeeper's line was just non-existent. Like, it was so no grass. It was just like, if you have a shot and it lands in there, you're normally going in. Like, I enjoyed it, but I can see why, especially some council pitches were shocking. Like, a bit of rain, games called off, and it's like, if you look forward all week to play a game, it's get called off. It's like the worst thing ever.
Yeah, and I suppose in a way, like, that element of, like, I think the main issue is not, pitches aren't going to be perfect, like you said, Brandon, but it's that aspect of games being called off every week. I know for me, like in December, I could go 3 or 4 weeks without refereeing a game, especially at that level, purely because pitches just didn't have the capability to deal with the weather. How has that been like for you and your players? Like, do you see because obviously, if your players are playing for fun and enjoyment, but then aren't going 3 weeks without a game, does that have an impact on the team and you as the coach?
It depends if it gets rearranged or not. Like, if the game gets called off and it's a league game, it's okay if it gets rearranged. So the kids tend to be okay with that. Like, look, oh yes, we'll get an extra week. But if it's a friendly and then it gets called off, then they're a bit more upset and they're a bit more like, oh, well, we've missed out on a game now. But obviously, it's one of the things it's what comes with grassroots football. You're going to get postponements, you're going to get bad pitches, and you keep and moan about it. And and feel downbeat about it, or you can just get on with it and just try and work your way through it as best as you can. Really.
Just a quick question: what team has one of the worst pitches, if you can think of any?
Apart from my own team. Oh.
not to like name and shame, but what
South Bank pitch was shocking. That was never cut.
Do you know?
For me, Go on, Brendan.
If you go down to Vernon Park, they have the worst drainage system there, and they have just a load of trees by the pitch as well. So come autumn time, when all the leaves are off the trees, you can't see the line because it's just covered in leaves. Or if you go down to, I think it's Sherwood, play on the bottom of Woodthorpe Park, and the pitch is on a slope, and you can kick it one way, and it'll just roll down the complete other way. And
I was going to say,
you just can't do it. It's awful.
I know, like, for me as well. Like this season just gone. One of my main issues was. So like down near Dunkirk, so near the Clifton Boulevard, obviously with the rain. I think I can't remember what age group it was, one of the older ones, but Dunkirk manager told me we haven't played a home game here in 8 weeks because obviously the riverbank fell in, all the water had just come straight up the pitch. And I remember driving to uni one of the days, and the river had come right up to the point where you could just see the top of the crossbar. But everything else was just completely submerged, and it was like, how's that pitch even?
Or am I thinking of the other team?
No, I don't think there's a stand near Dunkirk. I'm not sure. Actually.
There's a team over there that's got a stand. I remember playing them. They're always top. I forgot what they were called.
Yeah, you've got like Dunkirk and Pelican both play down there, down by near the boulevard. But I know that as soon as that riverbank rises up, you've got no chance of playing down there. Brandon, obviously, like one thing I've noticed this season is 4G pitches. It's like all-weather pitches. Especially, I know that the FA are trying to. I've made a real good effort to try and set them up. Have you noticed a development in them? What's your thoughts on the use of 4G pitches in grassroots football?
Yeah, I think it's good. I think the more 4G pitches that are available, the better, really. So, for example, like I think on near Carlton Forum now, that's now 4G. They've turned that around completely, and you can hire that out. Yeah, it's really nice. It's a really nice pitch now.
They've only just done it this year, I think, Dylan. But yeah,
with the sun that used to have that sun thing on it.
Yeah.
We sneak in. Oh wow,
that's a full. That's
have to go check that out when lockdown's done.
Yeah. So yeah, like the one thing I've noticed is like the development of them, and I think it's a great thing. Obviously, like you said, the only issue I have with them is I don't think there's enough of them. I know that like from a referee's perspective, you'll have like sort of like one to a catchment area, but then the issue you have is like 3 or 4 teams trying to book out that pitch every week because, you know, at the end of the day, it guarantees you games and there's probably nowhere else to play. What would your thought be towards that? And do you think like more should be done to sort of improve this and get more 4G pitches out?
I think, like you say, obviously it helps the games and it helps you play your fixtures. But obviously, like you say, the downside is everyone wants that pitch.
Yeah.
So you've got to be there pretty quickly to get a pitch. And personally, I don't think they need to put more in, just because it's a lot of money to get them installed. Then they also charge a lot of money as well because they have to get that money back.
Yeah.
I can imagine.
Yeah, this brings us back to the financial.
So no, it's a good idea, but if you can't afford £45 for an hour, then it's just a no-go straight away.
Yeah, of course. And like I said, it takes you back to that financial thing of if your team's struggling financially, which a lot of teams are, then there's just no use of popping them up. What about you, Dylan? What do you think to 4G pitches? Obviously, they weren't around as much when we were playing, but you know, would you have preferred to play on them? What's your thoughts on popping up now?
Probably not. I wouldn't have scored as many goals as I did. No, like Brandon said, they are like in theory they're good, but like they are. I remember even trying to rent one out with you mates want to play. They're a rip off anyway. It's cheap to obviously it's free to go down to your local park. Do you know what I mean? Kick around.
Yeah, they are super expensive.
And also, it's no longer grassroots football, is it? If everyone has one, but I think if the clubs get together and like make these 3G pitches, 4G, whatever what they're called, for as many as you can get, right? Then lower the prices. I think you'll see a lot of improvements and like maybe better football
around the
country. Do you know what I mean? Like
absolutely.
play football on these pitches. Like, it'll help teams like Brandon, where it's like if you make so many and chop the prices down, teams
Yeah.
are still going to be able to play and still be able to function. Where 45 quid for an hour of pitch is absolute rip-off, an absolute rip-off.
No, it's silly as well. And I mean, that makes your sub prices just so expensive. And if you can't, and I'm sure like if you've ever had to up your sub prices, Brandon, that's not going to make parents happy, and it could just cause so many more issues for everyone involved. What I would love to see, like personally, is sort of all the big clubs, like just put like a little pot to the side and just say, right, this is for grassroots football. And if every club did that, we could start to see the development of these like 4G pitches. And I think I think the more of them that pop up, the better. Especially obviously like from a grassroots perspective, they are expensive, and because there's not many of them, like you said, Brandon, that they're having to charge a silly price to make the money back. But if they could get sort of, if clubs can get some money together for everyone, and then you can start build more of these and make them more accessible, the price is going to drop for them and more people are going to use them. Again, from a training perspective as well, do you obviously like summer and winter training, like nighttime gets dark? How do you find sort of like, do you think they're good for like training? Do you struggle to get them for training? Obviously, having to train weekly, they can be expensive, not only for games, but to train as well. So how do you guys sort of tackle like your winter training and the use of them?
With great difficulty, to be fair. You can go from like paying nothing for training for weeks to having to try and find 30-40 extra pound a week for training facilities. So I try and keep training below 20-25 pound if I can, which usually gets you a sports hall at a school or something like that. So I don't tend to use 4G pitches again just because of the cost. So that could be like an extra £160 a month just because of the prices. But I think for training purposes, I do think they're great. I think obviously you've got the floodlights, you've got the goals, and you've got like the actual pitch markings as well. So for that sort of, in that respect, then I think they're perfect for training facilities, really.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day as well, if a team has the accessibility to use them, and there's more of them, the price isn't high. Not only are the kids going to enjoy that more, but development, grassroots football is only going to be of better quality. Players are training on a better pitch, playing on a better pitch. It's only going to bring good things for them in terms of how well they can play and sort of the capability they can come. So at the end of the day, if these top clubs can begin sort of like pumping a bit more money into them, they're going to get better players coming through grassroots football into their academy. Really,
I think you can see now, obviously with the coronavirus and everything, how much clubs can actually save through finances.
Yeah,
and I don't think it'd be too hard for clubs to put money aside, as it's proven right now.
Absolutely.
To get back into grassroots. Obviously, I'm not talking the same amounts. I'm talking just small amounts to them, which probably don't mean anything to them, but it will actually mean a huge difference to grassroots football.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, like just sort of to wrap up then, sort of in the future, so like within the next sort of 5 to 10 years, what would be like the key sort of big changes you'd love to see within grassroots football? Like what are your main things that you think grassroots football needs?
I just think it needs a bit more money. I don't think you should have to apply to a fund in place and then you have to try and beat out the competition. You have to, I think everyone should be able to access money if they need to, if they can prove they genuinely need it and what the money is being spent on. I don't think that should be an issue, especially if you're wanting to produce the next 1966 World Cup team. Do you know what I mean? You need they have to start somewhere, and it has to start grassroots. So I do, if there was money available, then I would like to see that be opened up to everyone rather than just the big clubs like your West Bishop's and your Burton Joyces. Because yes, they're a big name, but actually, do they produce the best players? Probably, maybe in some cases, but probably not in a lot of cases as well.
Do you think they get favoured then? Like these?
I think so big time. Like if you ask a player, would you rather go to West Bishop or if you rather go to a team they haven't heard of before? Most people have heard of West Bishop. Most people have heard of Burton Joyce. And I think there's a stigma attached to teams like Dunkirk and Pelican. That they've always got the best teams. Therefore, if we give them more money, they'll produce better players for us. And in reality, it doesn't work like that.
Of course not. No, of course not.
Especially at like the grassroots level, where in the brutal reality of things, like a lot of clubs are even. And for me, like one big thing that I've noticed, which completely sort of correlates with you, Dylan, is these bigger teams are only sort of winning purely based on the fact that they have the financial ability to function and to fund their club. Whereas the brutal reality is that some of these teams that haven't got the money at all have actually got the better quality players, but because they can't turn up, because they can't train, because they can't play as much, they just miss out, and it's a shame.
It is.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think like the best, in my opinion, the best players are the ones that are out and about kicking the ball on the street, because they're learning the skills, they're learning the tricks. Whereas in like more affluent areas, they're probably not doing that, but they get more money because it's seen as a better area compared to maybe like St. Anne's, where you don't get a lot of money because of the area itself and because the stigma attached to St. Anne's. But actually, some of your best players are probably the ones that have had a tough upbringing and struggled with finances and whatever.
Some of the best players in the world, like talk about top level of all, like from the bot, like when they were young, had it rough. Do you know what I mean? Ronaldo. Paul,
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and all they did was kick a football. So yeah, I agree, Brandon. This stigma of you're playing West Bridgford, you must be good, better than someone St. Anne's is like so
it's silly. It's a shame that we still have that. Yeah,
stupid and very, just like I said, old-fashioned way of thinking.
No, definitely.
Yeah. But yeah.
Do you want to wrap it up, Aaron? Do you want to wrap it up?
Yeah. Yeah, if you want to wrap it up, dude.
All right, then. Well, that's been our first episode of this segment. I want to thank again Brandon for coming on.
No worries, man. Anytime.
We got a really good light in grassroots football. I know. Thank you for setting this up as always. And thank you for
not a problem. Always enjoy it.
We'll see you guys in the next video.